Hi guys, hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you've had a sensational day. The benefits of grandparents looking after their grandchildren are really well documented. For example, studies have shown that grandparents who babysit are less likely to develop dementia and Alzheimer's. One study in America actually found that grandmothers who babysat once a week scored higher on cognitive tests rather than the grandmothers that didn't. But grandparents usually don't mind seeing their grandchildren and don't see it as a burden by any means at all. But of course, they're retired, they've got more time on their hands, and they just love seeing their grandkids for the kisses and cuddles. Admittedly, it must be very difficult for families who don't have grandparents as a backup. For those that do and that do actually have the opportunity to have the grandparents look after the grandchildren on a regular basis and use it in particular as regular childcare, we've got some awesome tips tonight with our guest, and as you can see on the screen, which we're really excited. We've got Alice, and pronounce your last name. I can't pronounce it very, very well.
It's Zsembery. I married into it. It's Hungarian.
Beautiful. Alice is an absolute superstar, and she's one of our partners here at Kiddipedia. She'll be sharing some tips tonight. We've published an article recently titled Ways to Help the Grandparents Who Help with Regular Childcare. So Alice is the founder of Jack and Lou's and author of the book Real Kids, Real Play. This book is amazing, and from day one I've been a huge fan of it. The book details 150 activities to do around the home using household items, and it's Alice's hope that Real Kids, Real Play can really help make every parent, guardian, grandparent and carer's role just a little bit easier. So how are you today, Alice?
I'm good, thanks, and thanks for that wonderful introduction, Rachel.
I've always been a huge fan of yours and the concept behind this book, So I guess, we're going to be speaking about the article that we've published, and we publish your stuff every month, and we're really honoured to be in partnership with you. But this is our first interview, so for people that haven't actually seen or heard or seen you through a video like this, tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and what prompted you to start your business, and tell us about this awesome book. We're all ears.
Okay, well, so I'm a working mum with two young kids. I've got a 3-year-old girl and a 5-year-old who's about to start school on Monday. And I'm a maritime engineer, nothing to do with the kids' space at all. But what I found was when I had my second child, I was stuck at home on maternity leave with a baby that was sleeping all the time, or often it was too hot or too cold to go outside with the newborn baby. And I had this really energetic 2-year-old boy in the house, literally bouncing off the walls. And I was trying to find ways of entertaining him. Like every good-meaning parent, I'd bought all the toys he could possibly dream of, and nothing was helping him out. So I started searching for activities that I could do within the home that would burn off some of that toddler energy. And I was very surprised to find I couldn't find any books that had kids play activities that were energetic. All I could find was either craft activities, which anyone with a 2-year-old boy will know you're not going to get them entertained with craft for too long, or I found books that had activities that required a lot of items to be purchased, and what I needed was something simple and quick that could be set up in 5 minutes with what I had around the home. So I guess it became a bit of a passion project to research. I think we got up to about 180 activities to do them all at home. One of my key mantras was that it needed to be tried and tested by a real family, and it needed to be shown through pictures, because on my days off, the last thing I wanted to do was read anything. I had a theory, if you can't show it in pictures, then it's too complicated. So that's where Real Kids, Real Play came about. So that was probably 2 years in the making, and it was released last year. And we've had great reviews since. One of our most notable was from Maggie Dent, who's a well-known Australian parenting authority. But what we've found since we've been selling it is not only is it a hit with parents and carers, but there's been a lot of grandparents that have embraced the book, and it's become a really useful resource for them, particularly if they're undertaking regular care of grandchildren. So I think what has been really useful for them is that it resonates with their values of using what you have around the home and not cluttering up the home, but perhaps raising children was a little bit of a while ago, and they've forgotten some of the activities, so it helps remind them of all the things you can do around the home using household items.
Yeah, there's so much gold in that book. It's unbelievable. And I think in this technology-driven age as well, it actually brings back some of those old-fashioned values and that sort of stuff. And I think this is perfectly aligned to this article, but just in life in general, I just think it's just timely, and it's just needed even more so than ever. So I have always loved the concept behind
Thank
it.
you.
So, really congratulate you and honour you for writing this, because it's just brilliant. And so as I was just saying, so the article that we've published for you is ways to help out grandparents who help with regular childcare. So, what kind of grandparent care have you received and experienced in the past? Could you give us a little bit of an overview?
Look, so we're very lucky. We've got both sets of grandparents living close by. We've got my husband's parents within 3 kilometres, and my mum's about a 20-minute drive away. So we're very lucky to have both near us. When I was pregnant with my first, my mum, she saw that as an opportunity. She was working 5 days a week, and she saw that as her opportunity to start transitioning to retirement. So as soon as my son was born, she went down to 4 days a week at work, and then looked after him for 1 day a week, which was obviously a great help when I was going back to work. And at the same time, my in-laws helped out whilst he was young 1 day a week as well. Over time, we found that things have changed on the in-law side of things. They are more comfortable with an ad hoc arrangement that's on an as-needs basis when I need to do an extra day of work. They didn't really want to be committed, for a number of years every week on the same day. But because they're very close to us, we find that ad hoc arrangement works if I need to do something at the last minute. With my mother, well, she has for 5 years now done 1 day a week, day in and day out on a Thursday. It's now grown to 2 children that she looks after, and she basically leaves her house at 6:30 in the morning. She drives over here. She's here by 7, and my husband and I are out the door. She then feeds the children, gets them dressed, last year she was dropping my son off at kinder, and that will now be school. She then takes my daughter home to her house, looks after her for the day, comes back for the end of school, picks him up, and then feeds them and has dinner ready for them and us when we get home from work at night.
What a lifesaver.
So we are very fortunate in that arrangement, and I know grandparent care differs greatly and any care is appreciated, but we're very, very lucky to have her. And she was actually on the 7:30 report last year at about that time where the childcare subsidy changed because of the amount of care that she gives us. So she does also help out on an ad hoc arrangement if, we want a night out somewhere, but she's always there on that Thursday, week in and week out.
Yeah, and I know in taking some information from the article you mentioned, according to the ABS in 2017, grandparents constitute up to 30.5% of care for preschool-aged children. But now, because, and as you just mentioned, because of the changes in the childcare subsidy, which came into effect last year on the 2nd of July, of course, everyone watching, and you already know that the 2 payments being the childcare benefit and the childcare rebate sort of merged into one. That was abolished and now replaced with the childcare subsidy, and which is means tested, of course, and sort of depending on the situation, the family situation, some families consider to be out of pocket. So, and it can mean that childcare is now a little bit more unaffordable than it was before being means tested. So definitely this is a situation that I think a lot of families are going to be affected by, depending on their situation, and finding that if they do have the ability and the grandparents are willing and able to be able to look after the children, definitely this is, I think, a topic that a lot of families are going to be looking for some tips and advice. So for anyone that hasn't read the article, can you maybe just give us a little bit of an overview of what the article's about? Okay,
so the article's really about understanding what issues do face grandparents when they're looking after preschool-aged children, and some helpful tips on how to help grandparents out. A lot of the time grandparents don't accept payment necessarily for the care, and other ways you can help them out, and also how to make sure that you nurture that relationship going forward, the reciprocal relationship.
Yeah, and you've got some really golden points in the article, which I'm sure we're going to go through. The link is going to be at the bottom of the introduction to this interview tonight, but you'll actually see that there's 4 key points. So we've got 3 key questions, as we always ask in our interview. So let's get cracking straight into that. So question number 1 we've got for Alice. What are the key issues that grandparents face when looking after preschool-aged children? Please tell us. Okay, yes, computer screen has frozen. Hi, Alice. Hi, guys, we're back. So, Alice, tell us, what are the key issues that grandparents face when looking after preschool-aged children?
Well, look, it's very interesting. There's not one type of grandparent, and so the issues they face do vary greatly. What I've found talking to customers and friends and grandparents, that there's a number of issues that come up, and they vary between grandparents. So firstly, there are some grandparents that don't feel comfortable driving their grandchild around. It might be because they are nervous about the responsibility, or they no longer drive at all. But either way, this results in them being limited in where they can go and how far they can, venture outside from their house. Some face physical difficulties in the job. Like, let's face it, looking after kids requires a lot of stamina, and whether it's lifting the pram or a child out of a high chair or just simply keeping up with them, it can take its toll. Some don't have the financial means to look after them in terms of all the demands that children require, food, nappies and general requirements, or taking them, they're hesitant about taking them out on excursions because of the costs involved. Some may struggle with the mental demands of the job. There are emotional challenges with dealing with small children, and I know they bring me to the brink some days. They may simply not know what to do with them and what resources are available to them. We need to remember it's been quite a while since they last raised children, and they can forget what's available to them in the community quite quickly. There can be some friction between their parenting values and yours. For some grandparents, they may take the line of, if I'm looking after them, I do things my way, and be quite adamant in that and defensive in that position. If you express any preferences on a variety of issues. For others, they might be more tentative in showing any discipline or authority for fear of overstepping the line and creating issues with their child, or I guess we say more particularly child-in-law a lot of the time. And for some of them, they might have worries or issues in relation to their lifestyle, and how a regular commitment might change that.
Yeah.
So there are quite a variety of issues that they can face.
Definitely. And also, and I think you sort of touched on it briefly, but if the parenting styles differ as to how, we parent in this day and age as opposed to how they parented and that sort of stuff as well. So
exactly.
100%. So, that definitely there's going to be a whole range, as you just mentioned, of issues that can sort of affect and face their grandparents when looking after their preschool age kids, and something to keep in mind, I guess. Question number 2 we've got is, in what ways can you help grandparents who look after grandchildren on a regular basis?
Yeah. Oh, well, look, obviously one is to provide financial compensation for them, which recognises that you're providing them with assistance. I know there's the question about whether grandparents should be paid for their role, and there's very different opinions on this. And I know some people, including my mum, may argue that they are grandparents and that it's a pleasure to them. Personally, my view is that there's a difference between grandparents taking care of children on an ad hoc basis on their terms when they would like to, versus committing to looking after grandchildren as a substitute for childcare or nanny on a very regular basis. So I think there's a clear differentiation there.
Yeah, 100%. And the article, you sort of highlight some of these key points, which is fantastic. And as we're saying at the start of the chat, that we're going to have the link in the introduction to the paragraph that, as you mentioned, you said, you said to be respectful of money, to consider their mobility. This is some of the things you mentioned earlier on, and there's a whole heap of additional resources and stuff, which I'm sure we'll speak about. Sorry, that's my dog burping in the background. He's just inhaled his dinner. If you heard a little burp, that was Hugo tends to burp when he likes to gulp down some water or inhale his food. He doesn't get enough of it. I'm sorry about that. I'm really sorry about that, but Anyway, children and animals, I say never to watch it. I'm sorry. So you mentioned 3 of the key points that you've got under be respectful of money is maintain and replenish a supply of essentials such as nappies, wipes in their house, pack lunch and snacks for the children, and also send your child along with their own wallet to treat grandparents to a coffee and cake at the local shops. And I love that idea too.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important one because it also helps foster a sense of kindness and giving with your child as well, and learning how to look after others. So I really like that idea. On some of those key points, when grandparents aren't or are refusing payment or aren't wishing to accept any, it's very important to be conscious of what they need to fulfil the role that you've asked them to fulfil, which is childcare, and helping them out in that as much as possible. So things like a pram, whether it is that you bring one over every time you visit or whether you keep one there, and consider something that's lightweight and easy for them to fold and lift in and out of the car. I know if it's too complex to fold down, my mum wouldn't be able to handle it. So I love the City Mini GT for that reason, that it's simply a one pull system and it folds automatically. In terms of a car seat, we've had different experiences with grandparents. My mum has 2 permanently sitting in her car. Other grandparents don't wish to have them permanently in their car. Whichever way it is, if grandparents are driving the children around, you should be conscious to provide a car seat, but also if they don't want it in their car all the time, make the effort to get there 10, 15 minutes earlier so that you can install it for them and uninstall it at the end of the day. If they prefer to stay at home, then toys and activities that don't contribute to clutter. They've just got their children out. The ones I've spoken to don't want all the mess back in. They just want a limited selection of toys at their disposal. Of course, as I mentioned, we've had a lot of grandparent interest in the book Real Kids Real Play for that reason, but also simple things like Play-Doh, sticker books, puzzles, a ride on bike for the backyard can make their life a bit easier. And being on front foot with nappies and wipes, as you mentioned, if I'm not quick enough with that, then my mum will go and buy it first. So I try and preempt that and keep her well stocked all the time so that she's not forking out money. And look, another great thing to do for grandparents is remind them of the support that they have in the local community. As we know, there's free things as well as paid activities. So keeping financial considerations in the mind, creating a folder of things like local library story times, toy library opening times, free activities at local museums, kid-friendly cafes that are in the area. I know I certainly didn't observe which cafes were kid-friendly until I needed to. And also, of course, the list of emergency phone numbers like Poison's Hotline and Nurse on Call. I'm not even sure that they would have existed, back in our day, let alone, generations before that. So, and you could also consider if there is a museum, zoo, play centre or toy library that is located nearby, perhaps a membership card to that they can use whenever they need to might just help in that caring role. Yes, so they're my key suggestions.
Yeah, so as you said, local library story times, toy library opening times, having a booklet with this, free activities at local museums, local kid-friendly cafes, and the other thing you've mentioned in the article, which I think is sensational, is just emergency phone numbers like Poison's Hotline and Nurse on Call. That's a great idea as well, just to make sure that they've got those resources on hand. Yeah, but another thing as well, I guess, is if there's any sort of cost-effective sort of shows and those types of things, I guess as a parent you can maybe pitch in and sort of buy the tickets for them, and I'm sure that they would love to have a day out, as long as they can sort of get there to and from, if they're driving and that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah,
so there's so many things.
Exactly. Yeah, and like last week, my mum took my son to V Junior, which is the junior cinemas at Village Cinemas, which has a slide and Hot Wheels track and is catering for toddler children. So I bought those tickets in advance, so she didn't have to deal with buying the tickets or any of that sort of stuff, and it was all done.
It was all done, yeah. And I guess the whole thing is to be mindful and just treat them as, you know, your parents as you would want to be treated as a grandparent later on as well. And that's with just respect and love and kindness as well. So it's just to be mindful, I guess, and considerate and compassionate, I guess, all those things, which obviously Real Kids, Real Play actually tries to do as well, which is, it all sort of ties into just that whole mindfulness and coming from a loving place as well. Question number 3, let's get cracking straight into that, is what are some other tips for fostering a positive grandparent and childcare arrangement? Please tell us.
Look, I think the first thing, very important, is to have a clear conversation up front to set the framework and clear up any concerns that anyone might have. Little questions like, what happens if grandparents are sick, or if the kids are sick, or if grandparents want to go on vacation? How much care will take place? What hours do you leave the house? What hour do you get home? How long will it be each day? Where will that be located? Will you take the children to them? Will they come to you? If how you will compensate them. This is an interesting one, the next one. Discussing views on subjects like food, discipline, sleep, crying, downtime and TV. Look, every parent has their views on how they would like to parent in those spaces. My key tip is don't sweat the small stuff. Be flexible. Inevitably, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but be careful not to sour the relationship by picking on the unimportant things. Certainly there are very important subjects there. I know, particularly in relation to food. We did baby-led weaning with my children from 6 months till about 1.5 years when they were more proficient at eating, and that was something that wasn't around 35 years ago and made both sets of grandparents quite nervous. So it was helpful to have a conversation with them about the theory behind baby-led weaning and why they might enjoy that. And then, sorry, I think I have a little child that's come in. It's pizza. And then I think the most important thing, sorry.
It's okay.
Working mum life, hey?
All good.
The most important thing, I think, is to revisit the arrangement regularly. The fact is that grandparents are over 70 and, well, they can be, and situations in health can change quickly. So at regular intervals, we always check in on what challenges are you facing? Is there anything we can provide to assist? And are they still happy with the current arrangement, or does it need to be altered? We've already changed it a number of times with grandparents, and we'll be doing so again next year. Yeah.
Well, look, we can see you've got your hands full. You've given us some incredible tips, Alice. If anyone wants to contact you or definitely buy a copy of your book, whereabouts can they find you?
www.realkidsrealplay.com.au or jackandlose.com, either one.
Awesome. We'll have those links at the bottom as well. Thank you for your time, and definitely we can't wait to catch up and do a face-to-face interview as well. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you really, really soon. Thanks for watching, guys. And
thanks, Rachel. Do you want to wave?
And
there's another one.
By all means, pop it in the bottom of the Facebook feed. But we'll speak to you. Just quickly introduce them to us.
This is Tom. Tom starts school on Monday.
Oh, good luck.
And this is our fiery redhead Emily, who's 3.
Hi, Emily. Well, I'll just blow big kisses to them. Give them a big kiss for me.
Blow a kiss. No.
Oh, give them a big hug from me, from Auntie Rach, and we'll speak soon, and thanks.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.